Commander ZLYRR of the Celestial Vanguard stood frozen, her bioluminescent skin shimmering with an intense array of colors that Captain Elias Mercer couldn't begin to decipher. He had merely acted on impulse, on instinct, really. After saving her life in the midst of a brutal skirmish against rogue space raiders, he had done what any human would do in a moment of relief and adrenaline. He kissed her. Her large, iridescent eyes widened as she touched her lips with a trembling hand. "You kiss me? That means we're bonded for life." Elias blinked. "Wait, what?" ZLYRR's mandible-like brows furrowed. "Did you not know? Among my people, a kiss is an irreversible vow, a sacred link forged between souls. To break it is to dishonor my entire lineage." Elias's mind reeled. He had navigated black holes, outwitted intergalactic warlords, and brokered peace treaties between warring alien factions, but nothing in all his years of spacefaring had prepared him for this. "Okay, let's just breathe for a second. There's gotta be a way to undo this, right? Some kind of ceremonial unkissing rituals?" ZLYRR narrowed her eyes, the vibrant patterns on her skin flashing dangerously. "There is no unkissing, Captain Mercer. Our destinies are now entwined. Our minds will slowly synchronize, our souls will drift into harmony, and soon you will feel what I feel." Elias paled. "That sounds intense." She stepped closer, scrutinizing him with an unreadable expression. "I would not have chosen you. You are reckless, impulsive, and entirely too human." "Hey, I take offense to that. I happen to be a very responsible." "You kissed me without understanding the consequences." Elias sighed. "Okay, fair." ZLYRR turned away sharply, her long, armored coat billowing. "We must prepare a bonding ceremony. My people will demand it. They will see us as a fated pair and expect us to rule together." Elias nearly choked. "Rule? Together? I'm a captain, not an alien prince." "Then you should have considered that before you pressed your lips against mine," she snapped, her voice a mix of exasperation and something suspiciously close to amusement. Elias groaned, rubbing his face. "Okay, so hypothetically, if we go through with this, what exactly happens?" ZLYRR's intense gaze softened just a fraction. "Our lives become linked. We share emotions, thoughts, even pain. It is the deepest connection one can form." Elias sighed, glancing at her. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, all shimmering colors and sharp elegance. And despite her fury, she hadn't pulled away. "Guess I better start learning the customs of my new in-laws," he muttered. ZLYRR let out a resigned sigh. "At least try not to embarrass me, Captain Mercer." Elias grinned. "No promises, Commander." Chapter 1. A Kiss Beyond the Stars. Lieutenant Nathan Carter never thought his routine scouting mission would change his life forever. As a pilot for the United Earth Space Force, he'd been assigned to patrol the outer fringes of the newly discovered Zevran sector. Reports suggested potential alien activity, and while the brass in command didn't expect hostile encounters, they had warned of unknown species that might not take kindly to human presence. What he didn't expect was a distress signal. And he certainly didn't expect that responding to it would land him face-to-face with the most breathtakingly beautiful alien woman he had ever seen. Nathan's ship had picked up the transmission near the asteroid belt surrounding a blue-green planet labeled as Zevra Prime. He had locked onto the signal and carefully maneuvered his sleek, white fighter craft toward the source, dodging fragments of debris and abandoned satellites. What he found was a sleek, curved starship, its shimmering gold hull marred by scorch marks. It was clear the vessel had been attacked. He opened communications. "This is Lieutenant Nathan Carter of the United Earth Space Force. Do you require assistance?" Static. Then a voice, rich and commanding, yet undeniably feminine. "Help, requesting emergency extraction." The transmission crackled. "Life support failing." Nathan's gut clenched. He didn't know who she was or why her ship had been attacked, but he wasn't about to let someone die out here. He engaged his docking procedures and carefully latched onto the damaged vessel. The airlock hissed open, and Nathan stepped inside. The woman standing before him took his breath away. Tall and statuesque, her violet skin shimmered under the dim emergency lighting. Her long, silken hair, the color of deep indigo, cascaded down her back. Her piercing, glowing silver eyes locked onto his, full of both pain and unwavering determination. She was clad in a form-fitting uniform made of a strange, metallic fabric that accentuated her lithe yet powerful frame. "You came?" she whispered, before collapsing. Nathan moved quickly, catching her before she hit the floor. He hoisted her into his arms, surprised at how light she was despite her height. As he carried her to his ship, her warm breath ghosted against his neck. His pulse quickened, but he pushed aside the reaction. First, he needed to get her to safety. As his ship detached from the alien craft, he set a course for the nearest neutral station where he could provide medical attention. The woman stirred slightly in his arms, her silver eyes fluttering open. Her gaze fixed on his face, and for a brief moment, something unreadable flickered across her expression. Then, before Nathan could react, her hands cupped his face, and she pulled him down into a kiss. The moment their lips met, an electric shock surged through his body. Not pain, something deeper. A connection, ancient and binding, latching onto his very soul. His heart pounded, and his vision blurred for a second. When she pulled away, she looked stricken. "You kissed me," she whispered, horror and awe mingling in her tone. "That means we're bonded for life." Chapter 2. The Bond of the Zevran. Nathan barely had time to process what had happened before the woman pushed away from him, her eyes wide with disbelief. She clutched her fingers to her lips, breathing heavily. "Whoa, hold on," he said, still feeling the lingering sensation of the kiss. "What do you mean, bonded for life?" She closed her eyes for a moment, as if trying to center herself. "I am Commander Lasara of the Zevran High Guard. Among my people, a kiss is not just a kiss. It is a sacred act. It creates an unbreakable connection between souls. By the laws of my people, we are now eternally bonded." Nathan swallowed. "Eternally? That's a pretty strong word." "It is the only word that applies," Lasara said, her voice firm. "From this moment forward, our lives are entwined. Our emotions, our pain, our fates, all linked. There is no undoing it." Nathan ran a hand through his short-cropped brown hair. He had been prepared for combat, for danger, even for encountering new species. But marriage by kiss? That had never been in the training manuals. Lasara groaned, pressing a hand to her temple. "I do not understand. I was weakened, barely conscious. I did not mean to initiate the bond. And yet, it has happened." Nathan sighed. "Look, I don't know anything about alien bonding rituals, but I do know you need help. You were in bad shape when I found you. Let's focus on getting you medical attention first, then we can figure out what happens next." She hesitated before nodding. "Agreed. But you must understand, if my people learn of this bond, it will change everything." Nathan's stomach sank. "Define everything." "The Zevran people take bonding seriously. It is not just a private matter. It is political. It is sacred. If I, a high commander, have bonded with an outsider, it will send shockwaves through our society. My position, my duty, even my people's relationship with yours, it will all be thrown into upheaval." Nathan exhaled slowly. "Great. So not only am I suddenly married to an alien commander, but we might also start an interstellar incident." Lasara gave him a pointed look. "Yes." He let out a dry chuckle. "Well, guess I better make a good impression on the in-laws." Lasara didn't laugh. Instead, she squared her shoulders, a fire returning to her eyes. "You do not understand, Nathan Carter. This bond cannot be broken. And if my people see you as unworthy of me, they may demand your death." Nathan stared at her. "Yeah. Okay. So, no pressure." Lasara's expression softened slightly. "We will find a way to navigate this together. But make no mistake, our fates are now sealed. We are bound for life." As Nathan turned back to the ship's controls, setting a course for the station, He had a sinking feeling that his quiet life as a pilot was well and truly over. Chapter 3. A Bond That Cannot Be Broken. James Callahan had faced many challenges in his life: bar fights on Mars, engine failures in deep space, and once even a malfunctioning AI that had tried to marry him, but nothing compared to the sheer panic he felt now. Standing in the luminous, marble-floored chamber of the Zerithian flagship, he was staring at Commander Vieira, who was absolutely seething. "Do you understand what you have done, human?" Her violet eyes shimmered dangerously, her long, silver hair floating slightly as though responding to an unseen force. "You kissed me. In Zerithian culture, that is the ultimate act of bonding. Our souls are now intertwined until death." James opened his mouth, then closed it. He had kissed her. But, to be fair, it had been an accident. He had been trying to revive her after a particularly nasty blast from a pirate's energy rifle, and, okay, maybe his lips had touched hers, but that was basic CPR, wasn't it? "Look, Commander, Vieira, this is just a big misunderstanding. Where I come from, a kiss doesn't mean a soul bond. It's just a friendly gesture. Or sometimes romantic, but definitely not eternal," he insisted. Vieira's glare softened only slightly. "Are you saying humans treat soul bonding so casually? How reckless. No wonder your species is so chaotic." James resisted the urge to groan. "No, that's not okay. Look, can we undo it? Maybe some sort of unbonding rituals?" The entire room fell silent. A few of the Zerithian officers around them gasped. Vieira stiffened. "Undo it," she repeated, her voice dangerously low. "You think this is something that can be undone? Do you wish to dishonor me so quickly?"
No.
"No, oh hell." He ran a hand through his hair, looking around. The gathered officers were whispering now, some throwing him deeply sympathetic looks. Others glared as though he had just insulted their ancestors. Vieira sighed heavily. "There is no reversal. You are my bondmate now, James Callahan, and you will have to live with that." James's stomach dropped. This was going to be a long, long day. Chapter 4. A Political Firestorm. James had never felt more out of place in his life. He had been escorted, to Vieira's personal chambers, which were just as regal as she was. The ceiling was an intricate web of glowing constellations, shifting in real time to represent the actual night sky of whatever system they were currently in. The furniture was sleek, curving in impossible ways, and everything smelled faintly of something floral and electric. Vieira sat across from him, arms crossed, clearly trying to calm herself. "This will be difficult, but we must find a way to work together. The Zerithian High Council will expect an immediate explanation." James exhaled. "And if they don't get one?" She met his gaze. "Then they will assume you have taken advantage of me. And intergalactic war might be declared." James nearly choked. "Are you serious?" She nodded solemnly.
Yes.
"The Zerithian people value honor above all else. If they believe you kissed me with ill intent and then tried to abandon the bond, they will see it as an act of war." "Okay, great, awesome," James muttered. "So I guess I have two options. Marry you and live as some kind of royal alien prince, or die in a war that I started with my lips." Vieira raised an elegant brow. "Do not be so dramatic." "Oh, I'm being dramatic?" James ran both hands down his face. "There has to be a way out of this that doesn't end in war or a shotgun wedding." Vieira hesitated before answering. "There is one way, but it is risky." James sat up. "I'll take it." She sighed. "We would have to prove to the High Council that our bond was an accident, but that we still hold mutual respect. If we engage in a series of trials, public displays of cooperation and devotion, then, over time, they may accept that this was fate rather than a deliberate act of deception." James grimaced. "That sounds very public." "It is. And probably dangerous." "It will be." "Fantastic." He leaned back, exhaling hard. "All right, Commander. Looks like you and I are going to be spending a lot of time together." Vieira studied him carefully before offering a small, almost amused smirk. "Yes, James Callahan. It seems we will." Chapter 5. The the unbreakable bond. Jason sat on the edge of the alien bed, his head spinning. Just hours ago, he had been a human pilot stranded in deep space, and now he was apparently soul-bonded to an alien warrior princess. Commander Zirin Vatelis paced before him, her silver hair swishing as she moved, her violet skin glowing under the soft light of her quarters. "You do not understand," she said, voice shaking between frustration and something softer. "A life bond is sacred among my people. Once formed, it cannot be undone. Our souls are now intertwined, Jason of Earth." He ran a hand through his messy brown hair, exhaling sharply. "I didn't exactly sign up for this. We were under attack. I was just trying to—" "You kissed me," Zirin interrupted, her golden eyes narrowing. "That act sealed our fates." Jason groaned. "Where I'm from, a kiss doesn't mean eternal soul attachment. It just means a declaration," Zirin finished. "Of commitment, of devotion." He hesitated. "Of interest. But it doesn't usually mean forever." Zirin crossed her arms, her armored chest plate reflecting light from the small glowing orbs floating in the room. "You misunderstand. This bond is not a mere tradition. It is biological, metaphysical. You will feel my emotions as I feel yours. If one of us perishes, the other will feel it." Jason blinked. "You're saying if you die, The pain will be unbearable," she said solemnly. "Some do not survive it." A long silence stretched between them. Jason tried to process the gravity of the situation. He had fought battles before, but this was something entirely new. His heart pounded, not just from anxiety, but because he could feel something not his own, a deep, gnawing fear emanating from Zirin. Was this what she meant by sharing emotions? "You're afraid," he said softly. Zirin flinched. "I am not afraid." Jason shook his head. "I can feel it." She turned away. "Then you understand. Our fates are now tied together. And if you do not wish to be by my side, I fear this bond will bring only pain to us both." Jason sighed. "Well, guess I'd better figure out how to be the best bonded partner a warrior princess could ask for. Huh?" Zirin turned back to him, her golden eyes searching his face. Slowly, her lips curled into a smile. "Perhaps you are not as unwilling as you claim." Chapter 6. The Trial of Fire. The alarms blared across the ship. Jason stumbled to his feet just as Zirin snapped her helmet into place, her warrior instincts kicking in. The bond between them pulsed. He could feel her adrenaline, her sharp focus. "An attack?" he asked. "Worse," she muttered. "A trial." Jason frowned. "A what?" She grabbed his wrist and dragged him down the corridor. "The High Council has learned of our bond. They demand proof of our compatibility." Jason blinked. "You mean we have to what? Go on a date?" Zirin shot him a dry look. "We must fight together in the trial of fire. It is a sacred test to determine whether we are truly a bonded pair." Jason let out a nervous chuckle. "Define fight?" They reached the doors to a massive chamber. Inside, alien warriors in ornate armor stood in a circle around a combat arena. At the center, a massive, four-armed beast with obsidian scales and glowing red eyes roared, chains barely holding it in place. Zirin turned to Jason. "We fight that." Jason's stomach dropped. "Oh, great. Romantic." Zirin smirked. "Try not to die, Jason of Earth." The gates slammed shut behind them. Chapter 7. The Trial of Hearts. The vast crystalline halls of the Zarinthian High Court shimmered with an unnatural radiance, the light filtering through the translucent walls like the glow of a dying star. Inside, the tension was palpable. Captain Elias Carter stood at the center of the grand chamber, his hands bound in golden energy cuffs that pulsed in sync with his heartbeat. Around him, the tribunal of Zarinthian elders, tall, regal beings with silver-veined skin and iridescent eyes, watched in solemn silence. But it was Commander Lasara, the woman who had both condemned him and bound her fate to his, who held his gaze. "You stand accused of violating the sacred custom of the Zarinthian bonding rite," intoned Elder Viren, his voice echoing through the chamber. "By sealing your lips to our commander, You have invoked an unbreakable union, one that cannot be undone except by death. Do you understand the gravity of your actions, human? Elias swallowed hard. He hadn't meant to kiss her. Well, he had, just not with the knowledge that a single act of desperation would tether his life to hers. But now, his fate hung in the balance, and so did Lasara's. Lasara stepped forward, her regal composure barely masking the turmoil in her piercing violet eyes. "I invoke the right of proving," she declared. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. "The right of proving?" Elias whispered to her as the murmurs grew louder. "It is the only way to determine if our bond is true," she replied, her voice laced with an emotion he couldn't quite place. "We will endure the trials together. If we succeed, the elders will recognize our bond as fate rather than accident. If we fail—" She didn't have to finish. If they failed, death awaited them both. Elias clenched his fists. "Then we won't fail." Chapter 8: Fire and Starlight. The first trial was one of endurance. Elias and Lasara stood in the arena of ascendancy, a vast floating coliseum where gravity shifted unpredictably and obstacles of fire and ice rained from the sky. Their first challenge: survive the storm. "Stay close to me," Lasara shouted as the air turned blisteringly hot. A wave of molten plasma descended from above, but Elias dove to the side, narrowly missing the cascade of fire. Lasara moved with inhuman grace, her body twisting as she deflected incoming shards of ice with her energy-infused gauntlet. Elias, relying on his military training, dodged and weaved, the ground shifting beneath his feet as if the planet itself conspired against them. "You're not bad, for a human," Lasara admitted as she landed beside him after an acrobatic flip over a geyser of flame. "You're not bad yourself, for an alien who kidnapped me." She smirked despite herself. Less talking, more surviving. The next wave of the trial came swiftly, a gauntlet of spectral beasts, their bodies composed of shimmering cosmic energy, their claws sharp enough to tear through steel. They moved as one, circling the bonded pair like wolves sensing weakness. Lasara raised her plasma blade. "We fight together." Elias unsheathed his own weapon, a combat knife that looked pitiful compared to her radiant blade, but he knew how to wield it. "I'm right beside you." The battle raged. Elias moved with calculated efficiency, striking where the creatures were most vulnerable. Lasara was a force of nature, cutting through the beasts with a ferocity that took his breath away. They fought in perfect synchronization, their movements instinctively aligned as if they had fought side by side for years. As the last of the creatures disintegrated into cosmic dust, the tribunal watched in silence. Elder Viren finally spoke. "You have passed the first trial. But the true test is yet to come. The trial of hearts awaits." Lasara visibly tensed, and Elias felt a sense of foreboding settle in his gut. Whatever the next trial was, it wouldn't test their strength. It would test their hearts. Chapter 9: The Trials of the Bonded. The starship Celestial Vow hummed softly as it glided through the cosmic void, its engines whispering against the silence of deep space. Inside, tension crackled between two figures standing in the grand chamber of the ship's command deck. "I told you, James." Commander Serafina Valtheri's voice was a mixture of frustration and undeniable fondness. "Kissing an Ilari isn't just some human display of affection. It forges a permanent telepathic and physiological bond. Our fates are now entwined." James Carter, former Earth diplomat turned accidental life mate, raked a hand through his disheveled brown hair. Right. I got that part. But what does that mean for us? I mean, aside from, sharing thoughts sometimes and feeling each other's emotions." Serafina sighed, her iridescent wings twitching slightly, a sign of exasperation. "It means the Council of Elders will expect you to undergo the trials of the bonded to prove your worth." Trials? Why do I feel like that's not just a figure of speech? "Because it isn't," she said, stepping closer, her golden eyes gleaming. "The trials will test your resolve, strength, and the depth of our connection. If you fail, the bond will deteriorate, and we will both suffer, possibly to the point of death." James paled. Oh, great. So, no pressure or anything. Serafina placed a hand on his chest, her expression softening. I will be by your side through all of it. Before James could respond, an alarm blared through the ship, shaking them from their moment of shared understanding. The Ilari warrior at the console turned, his expression grim. Commander, an unknown vessel is approaching fast, no identification codes, and their weapons are primed. Serafina's jaw clenched. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. James, stay close. As the ship lurched into action, James realized his new life was about to get even more complicated. Chapter 10. The Battle in the Stars. The celestial vow twisted through space, narrowly avoiding the first volley of plasma fire. The enemy ship, a dark, spiked behemoth, loomed in pursuit, relentless in its assault. James gripped the edge of the control panel as Serafina barked orders to her crew. Return fire. Target their propulsion systems. I want them immobile, not dead. Commander, James said urgently, who are they? She didn't look away from the battle, but he felt her emotions surge through their bond, rage, fear, and something deeper. The Varkari, a race of mercenaries and slavers. They have been tracking us since we left the Ilari homeworld. James swallowed.
Great.
Just what we needed. A sudden explosion rocked the ship, sending him sprawling. Serafina was at his side in an instant, helping him up with surprising strength. We must get to the heart of the ship. If they board us, we fight. Before he could protest, a violent jolt sent them tumbling as the enemy's grappling beams locked onto their ship. The screech of metal rang through the corridors. Serafina's wings flared. They're boarding. James took a deep breath, flexing his fingers as adrenaline surged. Guess it's time to see if I'm worthy of this bond. She smirked. Stay close, human. As the first Varkari warriors crashed through the breached doors, the battle for survival began. Chapter 11. The Unbreakable Bond. The air inside the command chamber of the Zyphron battlecruiser was thick with tension. The moment had been sealed, irreversible, a single kiss that had forever entwined their fates. Eli Carter, once a mere human diplomat sent to negotiate peace with the Zyphron Empire, now found himself bonded for life to Commander Serafina Valkori, the breathtaking alien warrior whose sharp emerald eyes burned with a mix of fury and something more terrifying, devotion. Serafina had spent the past few hours pacing in front of the ship's massive viewport, the cosmos stretching infinitely before her. The faint glow of distant stars painted her violet skin in hues of silver. She turned sharply toward Eli, her ceremonial armor clinking with emotion. You do not understand, Eli. Her voice was edged with frustration. This is not some fleeting human affection. The Zyphron bond is sacred, eternal. Our fates are now intertwined, and you cannot simply choose to ignore it. Eli swallowed, still trying to process the weight of her words. He had kissed her in a moment of desperation, a reckless act to prove his sincerity during a heated negotiation. Never in his wildest dreams had he imagined it would bind them together on a molecular level. There has to be a way to undo it, he said, half pleading. A ritual? A ceremony? A space lawyer? Serafina's lips curled into a smirk, though her eyes remained deadly serious. The only way to break the bond is death. Eli's heart nearly stopped. That's a bit extreme, don't you think? She stepped forward, her presence overwhelming. Not for my people. The bond ensures loyalty, unity. It is why we are strong. And now, Eli Carter, you are one of us? Eli ran a hand through his messy brown hair. Great. Just great. Chapter 12. Enemies on the horizon. As if the universe had impeccable timing, the ship's warning sirens blared. Intruders. Serafina's demeanor shifted in an instant. The weight of their bond was still fresh, but she was, above all else, a warrior. She turned on her heel, already barking orders to her crew. Reports. A young Zyphron officer's holographic form flickered to life. Commander, we have incoming vessels, unknown class. They bypass the outer defenses and are making their way toward the central docking bay. Eli, Despite his confusion about his new life mate status, instinctively fell into his role as a strategist. Could it be the Drakthars? Seraphina's jaw tightened. The Drakthar were a ruthless species, known for their brutal warfare and insatiable thirst for conquest. If they were here, it meant trouble, big trouble. I will not allow them to take my ship. Seraphina drew her twin plasma blades, their green energy humming as she activated them. Come, bondmate. Let us see if you are truly worthy of this union. Eli sighed, checking the pulse blaster strapped to his hip. You know, a normal engagement ring would have been fine. Seraphina smirked before leading the charge. The battle that followed was nothing short of chaos. The Drakthar warriors, grotesque and heavily armored, poured into the corridors. Eli found himself covering Seraphina's flank, taking shots when he could, dodging blows when he couldn't. Fighting as one, moving as one. Somewhere amidst the chaos, Eli realized something. He wasn't just bonded to Seraphina. He was starting to like it.